Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing?
Yo, I'm doing good.
Matt, that's great. We're here, I think, post Black Friday, post, the shopping season, Cyber Monday coming up tomorrow. We are recording on a Sunday evening, and Matt, might have continued to spend some disposable income to help fulfill that void in my heart that will never be filled. But Matt, enough about my spending habits, because no one wants to hear about that. And my budget allocation definitely doesn't want to hear about that. But what's up with you, Matt? How have you been since we had last conversed here in the Saturday morning clubhouse?
Jaren. I got cranked by my nap earlier.
Always good. Naps are always good, but cranks are also up there. Matt, how did your afternoon nap crank you?
Jaren, I think I was inceptioning myself because you know how sometimes you're dreaming, right? And then you realize, oh no, yes. I'm in a dream. And then you suddenly just wake up in that dream. And then you're like, man, that was weird. Damn, I should have stayed lucid longer so I could have done some lucid dreaming.
Right.
Because I've always been interested in that sort of thing, but I've never been able to do it properly.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just kept falling in and out of that oh, I'm dreaming and now I'm awake. And now I'm dreaming and now I'm awake. But that whole time, Jaren, I was inceptioning myself. I was dreaming the whole time.
That's oddly terrifying to me. But, Matt, hopefully this is a real life moment for you right now. But have you ever attempted to do that thing that people recommend if you want to lucid dream where, you just record all your dreams, no matter how big or small they have been? Just keep a notepad beside your bedside so when you wake up you're ready to jot it down when it's still fresh in your memory.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do that, and I have tried doing it, and then Jaren, just in my classic Matt fashion, I will stop doing it about 2 days later.
Classic Matt.
Classic.
I feel that. I feel that with a lot of my endeavors and hobbies or ill-founded hobbies that I am the same way, Matt. But in terms of being aware when you're dreaming, before we move on to the actual mistake zone, I feel that in between state, I'm usually aware that I'm dreaming when something starts to go awry in my dream where, I need to pump the brakes because I don't like where this is going. And I always think that whenever that happens, I'm aware, this is a dream. I can force myself to wake up, and I'll force myself to wake up because I don't want to deal with whatever misfortunes are headed my way in said dream. But
see, the thing is, Jaren, the thing that really lulled me into thinking I was actually awake was that between every it's a dream and now I'm waking up, I experienced my usual thing of sleep paralysis.
Right.
And and to know now that I dream about having sleep paralysis is really messing me up.
Matt, that's some pretty unfortunate dreams. You need to work on your dream game, Matt. I think next time we discuss about dreams, we should talk about our more positive, fun experiences. But in reality, my dreams are always revolving around the classic, Matt. The classic, oh no, it's the day of my final exam, or it's the day that my final essay is due for a class that I've never ever been to.
We're 30. We're in our 30s. How are we still having these school dreams?
I looked it up one time just because this is a reoccurring dream I had. And according to, our good friend Google, a few different results that I were given, take this with a grain of salt, have noted that the reoccurring school dreams are usually associated with you feeling stressed in general in your everyday life. Not sure how much I give to that, considering, Matt, I get these dreams a lot. And for the most part, I don't think... well, I think the few recent ones that I've had, the school example, I don't think I like to think I wasn't stressed, or maybe my subconscious is trying to tell me something. But
I mean, maybe you've just been stressed this whole time, Jared. Maybe you have like such a high baseline level of stress that like you don't realize that you're stressed.
Oh man, I think that is also in the Jaren wheelhouse of that being a Monday Jaren problem, since Matt, Monday Jaren hates Friday Jaren a lot. But
oh man,
this is Sunday Jaren in the mistake zone. Matt, the other week I saw the new Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and you know, we're not going to really go through the Black Panther movie, but I enjoyed it for the most part. I'm also curious how the Marvel Cinematic Universe moves forward right now, considering it is transitioning into the new phase, and Wakanda Forever was the send-off, or is seen as the send-off for the current phase, with the next Ant-Man movie being the start of the next one. And I think after I walked out of Wakanda Forever, I was thinking about how in the last decade we used to see the Marvel movies as, this big event, at least in our friend group, where Matt, I'm not sure if you remember, I believe Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, we all went opening night. I had my Tokidoki Iron Man hat. People complimented my hat every time I went to one of those premieres, or opening nights, I mean. And yeah, I just remember quote unquote growing up, or at least in the past decade, every movie before Endgame, I told myself that, okay, I've seen every movie except, the Hulk movie, and I think Thor Dark Order. And as in a post-Endgame MCU, considering there's so many different Disney Plus television shows and so many movies and all these different tie-ins, I have fallen off, notably. I think Endgame to me was was just a really good send-off. Not necessarily send-off, but a closing chapter of something in my life, because I remember feeling really oddly emotional after Endgame, in that I was seeing, a decade's worth of material basically come together for this cinematic event. And it was something that doesn't happen every day, where you literally do need to have 10 years of content all leading up to this moment. And it was fan service that I pretty much adored, because it really reminded me of, all those times that we went together. And before we kind of get into the video game aspect of it, Matt, I was just wondering how your relationship with the MCU is these days. Because again, you were part of that friend group that we would go see all the different Marvel movies. And I feel like in a post-Endgame world, that's something, at least within our friend group, within our circles, we hardly really talk about these days.
For me, I feel better about it now. Like, once I came to terms with the fact that, like, I don't have to watch every single movie in, like, the MCU and series, I felt a lot better about it. Because at some point, I'm guessing, like, maybe you felt this way too. I mean, I don't want to like put words into your mouth, but like, I wasn't interested in seeing some of these Marvel films just because I didn't want to, or I felt like I was obligated to watch them, instead of like wanting to watch them out of enjoyment. Like, I don't think I was actually there for Iron Man 3, because I don't think I fully sat through Iron Man 3 yet. I never watched Thor 1 or 2 fully. Like, I just basically have like a Cliff Notes YouTube like explanation idea of how those movies worked. Same thing for Black Panther, actually, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, I haven't watched like any of those, but like I still found myself enjoying any of the other like movies within the series, even though I only had like a base or a very like surface level understanding of those movies. So going into like this new saga, I feel like I'm going to be doing the same. Do you watch any of the Disney shows for the MCU?
I think that's where it's really been hard for me. I think after Endgame. I tried for the most part to keep up with the movies. I think no, that's a lie. I haven't seen the new Thor. I haven't seen Black Widow, but in terms of the shows, I remember being so excited for Disney Plus just to be able to kind of watch all this new content. But for the most part, I've only watched in full. I've only watched Loki. I've only watched Hawkeye. I watched a bit of Moon Knight, a bit of Miss Marvel, and a bit of She-Hulk. But again, it's more content that in theory I would like, just because I know that when Secret Wars comes out, when the Kang movie comes out, like the new Avengers movies, me consuming all the additional content would, in theory, give me that fan service appreciation for when it all comes together. But Matt, you know me, it's hard for me to watch anime or dedicate time to watch a lot of anime. So I'm also finding it difficult to kind of allocate or find time to put into the MCU properties, even though from what I have watched of, say, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, it all seems fun. But, you know, this might be a conversation for another time. But I remember watching, say, She-Hulk, for example, or watching through Hawkeye, that there's a dip in quality that I'm kind of used to from the MCU, where, you know, okay, this is definitely the Disney Plus, you know, showing compared to the big budget that you might expect from, you know, a theater experience. So again, that's something that is in the back of my mind where, as you said, Matt, like, you don't want this to feel like chores. You don't have to force yourself to watch everything just to fully appreciate it. But I think once I got that taste of what Endgame fully became, in the back of my mind when Secret War comes out, when, you know, the Kang movie comes out, it's, oh no, how much more would I enjoy this if I had, you know, all these other experiences with me. It's kind of the same with asking people, hey, or when someone asks me, hey, should I play all the other Yakuza games before Like a Dragon? And it's like, well, Like a Dragon is kind of standalone, but if you really want to appreciate the nuance, then I don't know, Matt. I think as we grow older and time becomes more, you know, we have less spare time. It's so much harder to dedicate to all the extracurriculars, but you know me, Matt, I want to be able to enjoy it to the fullest. And if I can't, then I don't know. I feel like it's the FOMO, Matt. As someone who lives in service games, it's the FOMO speaking.
Oh, man.
But Matt, the reason I bring this up is we've been talking about, you know, MCU fatigue. And I feel like especially this year, over the past few months, we've had a lot more announcements come to light about new superhero-based games being announced, being explored, being in development. And I just wanted to kind of run through some of the big ones that have been announced recently and see where you kind of stand, because even though we just touched upon the MCU fatigue, I was curious if that fatigue for you and for me kind of also leads into how we're seeing upcoming video games. But just to start off, on October 31st, EA and Marvel Entertainment announced a multi-title collaboration to make action-adventure games. EA announced that it's collaborating with Marvel on a long-term deal to develop at least 3 new action-adventure games that will be available for both console and PC. Each of these games will be their own original story set in the Marvel universe, with the first title in development being a single-player, third-person action-adventure Iron Man game coming from Motive Studios, who were behind Star Wars Battlefront, to Star Wars Squadron, and the upcoming Dead Space. And as EA is getting into these superhero games, a new title based on Black Panther, according to Giant Bomb member and former Games Beat staffer Jeff Grubb announced that, they are working on a Black Panther game as well. According to Grubb, the title is in early development and is a single-player affair. A new Seattle studio founded by former Monolith Productions VP and studio head Kevin Stevens is likely working on the project. In regards to the story for the Black Panther game, apparently it's going to be starting with the death of one Black Panther. Players take on a character that is becoming the newest incarnation of the Wakanda hero. And finally, Skydance New Media has an untitled Marvel game in the works. The game revolves around Captain America and Black Panther. It's a cinematic action game set in World War II. It's structured like a TV series, which they describe as being bingeable and a serialized adventure. This is on top of Insomniac Games' upcoming Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine. And of course, this is only in the Marvel sphere. In terms of DC, we have Rocksteady working on Suicide Squad, but kind of with all these titles in mind, Matt, we were talking about, do you have Marvel fatigue, and does that extend to the video games aspect of it? And essentially, based on everything that has been announced recently, do any of these Marvel games really sound interesting to you, or would you want to get your hands on them?
I think for me, my Marvel fatigue isn't really that high, but right. I think that's also just because I ducked out of a lot of the Marvel stuff earlier. Like I said, for the games that you were talking about, I really am curious on what's going on with that Captain America Black Panther game.
Yes.
Just because of how it's being called a cinematic action game.
Yep.
Because I'm not really sure what that entails in terms of what the game is, especially since they're making it episodic.
Yeah.
I'm almost in my head just picturing the Walking Dead game.
Right.
But that feels like that wouldn't be the kind of game a Captain America Black Panther game would be.
Especially one set in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Where, of the games that I highlighted just now, I think that one is the one I'm most curious about, just because I am really curious about the form factor and how it is structured. Plus, you would kind of have to guess that when you have both Captain America and Black Panther, there should be two separate almost gameplay styles in a way, where even though we do know Black Panther is a hand-to-hand combatant, I can also see him being more stealthy compared to Captain America, who might be throwing his shield around and having more... Well, then again, that can be something Black Panther does as well. So I'm really, again, curious to see how that game takes shape. But kind of when I look at everything that's been announced, I think in terms of everything, I'm curious the most with the Iron Man game. And... Insomniac, we know with Marvel Spider-Man, I'm really interested in a sequel to that as well. And I think the reason being is I want to see how, we know with Marvel's Spider-Man, that's tried and true traversal, but with an Iron Man game, I'm wondering if that might be more open world as well, just to give you the ability to fly around, or how Iron Man's flight takes effect in a game like this. I know with Motive, we have Star Wars Squadrons that they released not recently, but that was the last game they did release before Dead Space. And then you do have these big areas for you to actually fly around. So I'm wondering how much of that gets lifted and implemented into the Iron Man game. So, and I think nothing against Black Panther, and even Wolverine, while I do kind of expect of those games to be hopefully of quality as well, at least with Insomniac, they have earned the benefit of the doubt. But I think for me personally, it's not necessarily Marvel fatigue just because this is a video game. It's that I just don't see myself that interested in playing an action game that stars Black Panther, that stars Wolverine, just because I feel that, I don't know, that those characters and the hand-to-hand combat that I'm expecting don't really kind of appeal to me. even though like I can definitely see them be more flashy, I can definitely see them be more brutal as well. I don't know, Matt. Maybe I'm used to witches being flashy in my character action games as opposed to video game characters. So I'm not sure that those characters are for me, but maybe this is an extent of my Marvel fatigue where I just don't really see myself wanting to play a character action game with these characters. And on the flip side, I'm still interested in something like Marvel Midnight Suns, just because it is an ensemble of characters, plus it is a different, kind of mechanics at play, a different gameplay style. I said it before in our most anticipated 2022 games episode that I do like tiles. I do like the card-based system, even though it might be kind of wonky, but something like that appeals to me more than, say, a hand-to-hand character action game at this point. But who knows? Maybe the reviews are great and maybe people do say it plays well, but Black Panther and Wolverine aren't necessarily for me in terms of games, but I'd watch movies with them, sure. But I think there's a difference between a 2-3 hour movie experience than kind of investing 8 to 15 hours for a game. But that's kind of my take for it right now, Matt. Any other thoughts on these upcoming Marvel games?
Yeah, like I really hope that Wolverine and the Black Panther games are not open world games.
Right.
Because I feel like to have an open world game, you need some sort of like interesting traversal.
Yes.
I think maybe Black Panther could do it just because of like, I don't know, some kind of like athletic running type thing. But I don't know. In my head, I'm just imagining like Wolverine getting into a car and driving. And that seems really, really like dumb.
I don't know. He's been known to drive motorcycles in the comics, man.
Oh, yeah. No, that's right. He does motorcycle around. But the thing for Iron Man is that like I feel like an Iron Man game should be open world, but I always worry about traversal in open world games because I feel like that's like a very important like thing. And for Spider-Man, it's very interesting just because he can't fly. Like he swings around, and that makes the traversal a lot more interesting. Which is also why I was really looking forward to that. I think it was a PlayStation exclusive, maybe PlayStation PC, but like I think it was called Forsaken with that like free running girl.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Forsaken next year.
Yeah, like I'm super hyped at that because the traversal looks really, really good. But my issue with like what Iron Man does is that he flies, and I feel like flying is very dangerous to do inside of an open world game just because it minimalizes like the amount of interaction you actually do with the world compared to just something like like free running or swinging like in Forsaken or Spider-Man. Like I think that's my biggest concern about the Iron Man game if it is an open world game.
Definitely. And again, speaking about fatigue, we are kind of in a time where a lot of people talk about open world fatigue, and you would hope that even though they're not necessarily for me, that something like a Wolverine, something like a Black Panther really does have tightly designed levels. And I think that, I would expect those to be more, compact, precise, and hopefully well-designed single player experiences with with levels to match. And I'm actually also curious about this, Matt, just because, when I think about character action games, I associate them with, a Devil May Cry, a Bayonetta, something along those lines. But as we saw with, the latest Star Wars game, The Last Jedi, not The Last Jedi, but, that took on a more Souls-like kind of gaming, not necessarily experience, but that kind of slow, methodical combat. And I guess, Matt, when we think about an upcoming Wolverine and when we think about the upcoming Black Panther game, do you think that those would steer towards what I said or what I'm used to in terms of the Bayonetta, Devil May Cry character action? Or do you think there is an opportunity for those characters to explore a more Souls-like, slower, methodical gameplay style?
I think the Souls-like methodical style could maybe go towards Black Panther. I don't think Wolverine goes that way at all.
Right.
I think both of them maybe do lean closer towards like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, or even more towards like Batman sort of combat mechanics.
Oh yeah, I guess since Wolverine is coming from Insomniac and the Marvel Spider-Man games, or at least the recent ones, they do have that Arkham kind of counter-based combat. I'm not sure what that combat style is called. I usually associate it with the Arkham games, but I'm hoping that since Wolverine is such a different character compared to Spider-Man, that Insomniac does explore a different combat style for him as well.
Oh, you know what? I actually could really, really see Wolverine leaning towards a Dynasty Warriors type gameplay.
Oh, okay.
Not that I think that would be that great, but I could definitely see it going that way.
Just Logan mowing down hordes of whatever his enemies are in this game. Okay. But yeah, Matt, I guess we'll see how these games turn out. I guess, yeah, again, I'm just really curious to see what this Captain America Black Panther game from Skydance New Media ends up looking, and really how the Iron Man game itself plays out. But other than that, I think for me, as I said, it's not necessarily, if the gameplay is good, I'll check it out. But again, apparently the Guardians of the Galaxy game was a really fun game, but I'm not as much as I like the Guardians movies, I'm not necessarily that big a fan of those characters enough where I want to play the game. So I think my Marvel fatigue doesn't necessarily affect the games in my opinion, but it is, I just want to see characters that I like a lot more, or again, give me that ensemble with some sort of gameplay twist that seems really cool to me. So that was a long-winded way of me saying I'll probably pick up Midnight Suns when it's on sale or something. I don't know.
Like I feel like Black Panther and the Wolverine games live in, I hope it's on Game Pass.
Yes,
like territory for me.
Right.
Well, yeah. While Iron Man, I think could be a buy for me if it looks like interesting enough.
Right. I don't know if, I think Insomniac has a relationship with Sony. I'm not sure if they're owned in some capacity, but I don't think that's coming to Game Pass. But we'll see, Matt. We'll see.
I mean, so while we're still like kind of close to the topic of open world fatigue,
yes,
I feel like I might be getting that towards Pokemon slightly.
Oh no, Matt, you were so high on Pokemon last week. How, Matt, it's been 1 week since you've spent more time in the world of Violet and or Scarlet. Matt, how are you feeling with Pokemon Week 2?
Okay, so Pokemon Week 2, I think the Pokemon aspect of it is still like fun for me. I like doing the raid battles and stuff. I'm at that point of in the end game of Pokemon where you're grinding for materials so that you can make better Pokemon to grind for better materials more efficiently. Like, I'm in that dumb loop.
Matt, when you say materials, are you talking about shiny Pokemon, Matt? Are you our breeder?
No. Actually, you know what? They made shiny hunting less breeder millie this time around.
Really?
Because now what you can do is that you can make sandwiches that make it so that shiny Pokemon of a certain type are more likely to appear, which I think is like a really interesting change. And like this sandwich system is actually a lot more crazy than I thought it was going to be, just because it lets you do stuff like it lets you make eggs hatch faster. It lets you encounter certain types of Pokemon, like, or increase the spawn rate for certain types of Pokemon. It lets you change Pokemon so that, hey, they're either smaller in size or bigger in size. Like, there's a whole bunch of like little neat effects that you can do within the sandwich system that I really wasn't expecting them to put into like a Pokemon game, basically.
Matt, is the sandwich system a extension or at least evolution of what we saw with the curry system in Sword and Shield?
Yeah, I think it's basically the same thing, because like you basically pick ingredients, a bunch of ingredients, and then you kind of just throw them onto a piece of bread. But instead of like the minigame being you spin your like thumbstick around to like a certain rhythm, I think it was in the earlier games, this time you have to stack them up like Jenga tiles. And Jaren, the ingredients determine like what effect your sandwich gets, right?
Okay.
But as far as like real ass sandwiches go, Jared, these sandwiches are hot garbage.
Oh, Matt, lay it on me. What are some of the sandwiches we're dealing with right now?
Oh,
Matt, as sandwich connoisseurs, I feel like between you and me, we've had our fair share of sandwiches. And Matt, what are we working with here? What are we critiquing?
Okay, Jaren, I'm going to tell you how to make a sandwich that lets you spawn more fairy Pokemon. Okay?
Okay.
It's 3 slices of tomato, and then 3 slices of onion, 3 slices of green pepper, a hamburger, then 3 slices of tomato, and then 3 more slices of tomato, and then some herbs of any kind. Two types of herbs, like any kind that you want to put in.
Matt? That's too much tomato. I like me some tomato on my sandwiches, but that's too much tomato. Mm-hmm. And when you were telling me how this is supposed to attract fairies, I thought you were going to say, oh, it's going to be a dessert sandwich. But Matt, there's no reason to that tomato sandwich featuring a hamburger.
Jared, I feel like another worse one is how to attract fighting Pokemon. Jared, you take a sandwich, you put 2 different kinds of salty herbs, and then you put 3 pickles on it, and that's your sandwich.
But where's the protein, man?
There's no protein. Jared, if you want to hatch eggs faster, you put some jam on the bread, and then you put 3 cut strawberries, which actually might not be bad, but like the fact that you're doing this on like a baguette instead of like a slice of white bread, I think makes it worse.
That's the least offensive sandwich you've told me. I still can't get over that fighting Pokemon sandwich, Matt. What's the shiny Pokemon sandwich? Since when I eventually get Matt, there's a copy of Pokemon Violet on our table right now. So when I eventually get to that Violet version, how will I be trying to catch more shiny Pokemon?
Oh, these are the sandwiches for it. It makes the certain like type spawn more and spawn more with a higher chance of shiny.
Oh, okay, I got you.
But Jaren, these sandwiches are rough, I think.
Matt, that makes me feel bad just because maybe I'm not versed in curry enough, sadly, where when we were doing our curry monstrosities in Sword and Shield, I could let that slide. But Matt, again, as someone with very little culinary skills, I have made myself a fine number of sandwiches. And even I know that these are insults to my palate. And I wish that Nintendo and Game Freak and the Pokemon Company put more thought into this feature.
Guys, some of these sandwiches are just... See, okay, it's not even that like the sandwiches themselves are necessarily bad. They're bad. But like I feel like the thing that really messes me up is that you have to Jenga all of these things onto the same like piece of baguette. So if one of the...
So you're saying there's a chance of failure?
Yeah, there's a chance of failure because you're dropping them, but it's kind of weird because you pick them up from like a plate on the side and then you move them over kind of like a crane game onto above the sandwich and then you drop it. But you're kind of looking down at it from like kind of like a isometric view. So you don't drop it exactly where you think you're going to drop it. There's no shadow to tell you where you're going to drop it. So you kind of drop it and you hope that you've lined it up correctly so that it falls onto your bread.
Matt, when you said there's no shadow, it speaks wonders about this game that my first thought was, oh, is it just because it's not optimized well to have shadows produced?
I think that might be it, but like I feel like it might just be more like where the shadow you'd expect the shadow to be, it would be below the ingredient, but you're also looking at it from the way that like the shadow would be behind the ingredient.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little it could be that the game didn't want to render the shadow, but it's at an angle where it's passable enough that you don't have to, or you can assume that the shadow's just behind the thing you're dropping.
Man, all you're saying with this is that the Pokemon Violet and Scarlet sandwich system is a insult to our sandwich artisan friends. And I, for one, feel really bad for them for these heroes of the kitchen.
You can make some legitimate sandwiches, but they're going to have more random effects than these optimized sandwiches that I decided to look up.
What message are we being taught? Did Matt... Cooking Mama was really vital to the 3DS.
Oh,
so
man.
for Nintendo to do this, I know Cooking Mama wasn't a first party, game, but still Matt.
Mm-hmm.
But sandwiches aside, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
you lugged in with open world fatigue, more or less.
Yeah.
Do you feel it here, Matt, or how has the open world been treating you week 2 with Pokemon?
I think this is just a case of open world in all the games for me. So in Pokemon, or actually in any open world, I guess, game for me, where the open world is like, I think, well designed in terms of something like there's a lot of stuff that you can go do that like will suddenly just distract you from your main thing, even though like you weren't intending for that to happen. Is that I feel like about halfway through the game, or like any game like this, you end up getting more traversal based powers, and you've kind of experienced a lot of the, I guess, things that would distract you. So in like Pokemon's case, like, oh, I've gotten a lot of the Pokemon, so I don't need to like veer off to get to like, oh, like go hunt for them. I don't feel as like compelled to like hunt for them. I can just come back later and just do them all at once.
Okay.
And even in like just going to like towards Breath of the Wild, like before I would like hunt because, oh, there is a shrine somewhere, like I saw it in distance, I want to go to it, or I know that there's like probably going to be a weapon or a Korok over here, so I want to go get it. But again, like towards about halfway through, you kind of have your set team, your set loadout or whatever, and I started like beelining a bit more towards whatever my objective is, because I always like feel like, oh, I can come back, and I feel like that hurts me a lot now, just because when I realized I was doing this in Pokemon, after I finished the game, I decided to like go back to like all the places I was kind of just like beelining through, and I realized, oh, these areas are very like different. They're like nicely designed. There's like this cool little fixture here that would have been like really neat to come across if I like was doing this a bit more like naturally. And I also felt like that same way in Breath of the Wild. Like I know that there was a lot of later game areas that I kind of just wasn't really paying attention to, and I just missed a lot of, I guess, the effort that map makers and stuff put into those like portions of the map. And I don't know, I just feel kind of like bad about it, because I don't know, once you get like fast travel points and stuff like that, it really constricts the open world nature of those games for me, and I become a lot less like entranced by the game. And I'm wondering now how I'm going to look, in particular, like more soon towards Breath of the Wild 2. Like I wonder how much I'm going to beeline that game, just because I might have gotten my like exploration fill in Breath of the Wild, and I'm concerned that, oh, I feel like, I don't know how. Okay, I'm going to go back to Pokemon real quick here, Jaren. This is Pokemon's first open world game, like really actually like open world game. And for a lot of series that transition into open world, I feel like there's no way that they can transition back into linear worlds, right? Like I can't think of any series that has done that. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I think this was something we were definitely talking about during our, most anticipated games episode when we did bring up Breath of the Wild 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe our compromise would be that, oh, maybe moving forward, the mainline Zeldas would be, open world, something similar to Breath of the Wild. Or likewise, the Breath of the Wild format would be reserved for spin-offs, and say the mainline ones go to the more traditional, what we've kind of expected from traditional Zelda games, where we kind of talked about how maybe going forward the open world ones would be reserved for the spin-off ones, or essentially it was one would be the spin-off games, whether that be your cel-shaded ones that might be a different art style, and then maybe the mainline ones would be open world, or vice versa, where I think, at least with Zelda, I think you can still have that. You can still have both of them exist within the franchise, just because, as we've seen in the past, they have different art styles that you can potentially explore. Likewise, I think having a Wind Waker looking Breath of the Wild spinoff would be really cool to see, just because at least in recent memory for me, you don't really see that cel-shaded open world experience or of something of that quality. Well, I guess Genshin Impact is that for the most part, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily cel-shaded other than being more anime per se. But yeah, I think where you're coming with this is moving forward. Do you think all the Pokemon game, or at least mainline Pokemon games, will be this open world take, or do you also see them going back to the more linear, progression system, maybe for the spin-off, maybe for a Let's Go variation? But yeah, I think that's how I kind of see it, just with the success of both Breath of the Wild and, Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, that I think both of them can exist. And again, the open world fatigue concept, where I'm sure there are a lot of players that hope that we will see other versions being explored. Maybe it is a 1 year, it is this type, the other year, or will be the open world type. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. Then again, I'm not a game designer, Matt.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just concerned that it'll lose the magic, Jaren, and the magic is so good.
That's true. But I think in terms of Pokemon, and if we do see a Switch 2, you would hope that the next one actually is able to take the open world format and really deliver a refined version. But I think we've kind of seen it when we see games transition from one generation to another, where the first time around might be kind of not necessarily feature complete, a little light compared to previous entries, just because you're getting used to the new hardware. And I guess with the discourse of Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Game Freak has been able to get used to the Switch. So I think for more reasons than one, I'm really curious to see how the next Pokemon game is handled, just because you would hope that these ideas and these mechanics overall are fleshed out, but the track record so far isn't the greatest. But yeah, man, that's kind of my take about the open worldness of Pokemon. And as much as I am excited for Breath of the Wild 2, Matt, I said it before, the Switch is showing its age, where even though I enjoyed Bayonetta 3, even though you can see some good stuff in Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, and you would assume that Nintendo is putting their AAA team on Breath of the Wild 2, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, Breath of the Wild didn't necessarily, it ran better than the Wii U version on the Switch, but how much further it can be pushed with this hardware? And I think that's where my concerns are stemming from right now. And Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, again, different teams, that didn't do me any favors. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. But yeah, Matt, Pokemon, anything else that you want to bring to the update table?
Jaren, I hate the random online community for Pokemon. This game needs a better way to communicate with the people that you're raiding with, because in about 70% of my raids, the people who I'm teaming with don't know what they're doing.
Matt?
Jared, it's in the 10-year-olds. I know.
Yeah, I know, Matt. But this reminds me about... I have two stories that I want to share. Okay. The first one is, this reminds me about a game where, surprise, we're probably going to talk about for a bit coming up. Splatoon, especially in Salmon Run, where... you have Booyah, you have help on your D-pad in terms of communication. I remember seeing someone say, I wish left and right literally just said left and right so we can coordinate fly fish attacks or whatever those flying enemies are in Salmon Run. But Matt, I had a story that I wanted to share, and I should have said this in the beginning, but, it's all related somehow. So Matt... my partner went to a baby shower yesterday. Okay. And I didn't go because I'm an antisocial mess. Yeah. And they were telling me how there were some kids there, and one of the kids was wearing a Naruto shirt. Okay. And they asked the child, "Oh, you like Naruto? Do you play Fortnite?" And Matt, the child said, "No, I play Roblox, but the child's dad was there as well. And the child's dad said, oh, he plays a lot of Pokemon Go. And my partner asked, oh, do you have any shinies? And Matt, the kid's face lit up.
Oh, man.
He got his phone to show them all his Pokemon. And Matt, my partner told me that this child nicknamed all his Pokemon Pooh. And all
so good.
And all his shiny Pokemon, Shiny Poo.
Oh, God. That's such a good goof. Oh, man.
Matt? Have you nicknamed any of your Pokemon Poo or Shiny Poo?
No, it's how I was playing Pokemon Blue. Oh, man. That's
Matt,
a good goof.
Do you have any Matt, we watch a lot of YouTubers, and a lot of YouTubers have nickname themes for their Pokemon. As we sign off for the Pokemon segment this week, do you have any nicknaming conventions for your Pokemon?
No, Jaren, even when I was like nicknaming Pokemon that weren't dumb things like poop or fart, I was very unoriginal with my names. Like, I'm pretty sure my Charmander was named Flames with a Z.
That's so on brand as 90s kids. God. That's so, or sorry, early 2000s kids at that point. No, we were 90s kids when Pokemon came out. Yeah, we were 90s kids. Oh man, Matt. Matt, I think when I finally start up Pokemon Violet, I'm going to name all my Pokemon Pooh.
It's a good goof.
Pooh 69.
It's a good goof. Good goof. Nice.
So Matt, as the world's, let's say, sixth leading Splatoon podcast, I feel like we need to mention some Splatoon. I opened the floodgates earlier. And Matt, new update is coming soon. November 30th is around the corner, 7 o'clock. I'm not sure if the new update will, start this coming November 30th, just because that's when the current season ends. Matt, I am currently a bit nervous because I saw someone say that they tested it out and saved up all their Salmon Run rewards to get to 99 to see if it would bleed over to 100. It does not. And Matt, I want to get to 99 unopened Salmon Run rewards as well, but I'm currently sitting at 72. And Matt, I'm a bit nervous that my rewards might be taken away when the season resets. So I'm debating when I should open them or not.
The idea of that makes me want to vomit.
I mean, Matt, they took away my Splatfest shells that for some reason I didn't use for the gacha, but that's neither here nor there. Matt, new Splatoon weapons have been announced. And before we move on to a game I've been playing this week, how are you feeling about the weapons that have been shared so far?
I'm interested in some of them, but for a lot of them, they're not weapons I enjoy playing.
Right.
So maybe some of them fall flat for me. Like, I'm really interested in, as newbie of a weapon it is, Aerospray, the golden Aerospray with Sprinkler and Booyah, Jaren. Oh my god, that seems so fun.
Again, Matt, as a dirty Aerospray user, I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. But correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the golden Aerospray have different properties compared to the original one? Because I know in Splatoon 2, I believe there was a golden variant of the Aerospray as well, but I remember not using it. But has anything been announced in terms of its functionality compared to the OG Splatoon 3 Aerospray?
I think the functionality difference between the silver and gold Aerosprays was limited to Splatoon 1.
Okay.
I think for Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3, the redone weapon kits, the base weapon still acts the same. It's just a different skin on it.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know. Just because, Matt, even I'm a dirty Aerospray user. Well, you know what weapon I actually use, but I'm also a dirty Aerospray user. So if you're... And Aerospray to me isn't necessarily the best close range. Okay, all the weapons I use really suck at close range combat and for long range combat as well. So I am curious how, just because I'm not a fan of having the slide special on the aerospray, so for it to get the Booyah Bomb and even the sprinkler as well, I think that would be really interesting for me. But Matt, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there hasn't been any Tentamissile announcements, right, so far?
As far as I know, there's no new Tentamissile related weapon.
Damn, maybe season 3 we can see my aerospray Tentamissile combination.
I mean, I'm just saying, Jaren, like, I think they've only shown 7 or 8 of the new weapons. There's still a chance of there being a Tentamissile's weapon.
I'm hoping, Matt. I'm hoping. But yeah, Matt, other than the aerospray, anything else that has stood out that has been announced so far?
For me, the 2 other ones that stand out are Inkbrush with Mines and Ultra Stamp, just because I think Inkbrush with Mines seems interesting. Ultra Stamp I can take or leave. I feel like that still meshes with the Inkbrush like playstyle of you wanting to like run in and like just get in people's faces.
Right.
And Dapple Dualies with Torpedo and Reef Slider seem interesting to me. Torpedo just because it finally gives like Dapple Dualies range, because I think right now Dapple Dualies just has Beacon as their bomb, which isn't really that useful for them, especially since Dapple Dualies is a very short range weapon. And Reef Slider also helps you get in, even though it's going to leave you like vulnerable for a second after you pop it. But those are the 2 that are most interesting for me. Like Splattershot, the new Splattershot with Suction and Booyah, the new Mini Splatling with Toxic Mist Bubbler, the new Luna with Fizzy Ultra Stamp, which actually sounds like pretty interesting as well. But I can't play Luna because I'm bad at slow shooting weapons, which also leads into Slosher with Angle Shooter and Zipcaster, as I think the last announced one on their Twitter.
Yeah. But Matt, you know me, I'm a one trick. I'm like a 2 trick when it comes to that. And those tricks aren't even that good. So hopefully we'll see something more my speed. But yeah, I can't wait to get that aerospray try. And I'll be honest, Matt, I am just grinding that salmon run right now. Now that I linked that seed calculator to get the quote unquote perfect gear, that's also something I might start looking to as well. But
that's actually like a really, really interesting thing. I never knew that the clothes were seeded that way, that you can calculate them.
Man, Matt, I think this having access to that seed calculator, I might drop the link in the show notes as well, might have rejuvenated my giving me a new goal for Splatoon 3 once I get hopefully 99 Salmon Run rewards, but we'll see, Matt. We will see. So Matt, on this thought train of me actually playing video games, Matt, I've been playing a game that was released on Game Pass a week or 2 ago, and this game is Pentiment. Essentially, this is an adventure game from Obsidian Entertainment. It's set in Bavaria in the 16th century, and you take the role of the protagonist, Andreas Mahler. He's an artist who is essentially doing a placement in this small town as he works on his masterpiece while also transcribing for the Abbey. And for the most part, Matt, what really got me interested in checking out Pentiment was, one, the art style. The game itself revolves around religious imagery and themes, and it's styled in medieval manuscript art and early print. But also, the thing that really drew me to the game is that ultimately it becomes a murder mystery where Andreas is trying to get to the bottom of the murder of a baron he just met, and his mentor is currently being accused of committing. So that's kind of the basis of what Pentiment is. It is a stylized adventure game that, Matt, goes heavy on the text. There is really no voice acting here. So this is a visual novel through and through. And first off, Matt, it gave me a lot of Persona 4 vibes, not in the ways you're expecting, but Matt, for me personally, this game starts slow, where, like all kind of murder mysteries, you do have to set up your protagonist, you have to set up all the characters around him, the settings, but Matt, this game is a dense, beefy boy. As I said before, this takes place in the 16th century. There's a lot of religious imagery and themes where there's a lot to take in. And one of the cool things that I really do like about Pentiment is its context sensitive, or the way it handles kind of context sensitive terms that you might come across in dialogue. So when someone's talking to you, they might mention a person, they might mention a location, they might mention a practice or a concept, and that in particular might be underlined. So if you were to click it or hit your select button, it will kind of pan out. And essentially the game's presented in essentially a 16th century manuscript with different images. So it will pan out, show essentially a book page, and in the margins surrounding the picture where the game takes place, you'll have your context sensitive text or a picture of a person being referenced. So that's one of the things I really liked about it, where again, there's so much to take into this game, but it does a lot of really cool little things that really do help with the user experience. So it's really great to be able just to kind of pull the screen back and get the context, because you'll be getting a lot of different, people, locations, and different practices and concepts thrown at you, especially early on in the game, to really help set the scene. And Matt, I like how, since this is literally a text adventure, it really leans on the imagery of, scribes and replicating manuscripts. I do like how the text bubbles themselves are, they're in script, where not only are different thought bubbles stylized in different fonts, different fonts and stylized, but those are kind of associated to the people who of their class. So say you might have someone of higher nobility, you might see them in a more refined Gothic style where all the different farmers and common townsfolk, they do have scribbles as their text bubble. So that kind of really adds to the atmosphere of things, and it really adds to this notion of, someone is essentially transcribing this story to you, where text bubbles might have little mistakes. You might see something misspelled here or there, and you'll actually see the text get edited on the fly to correct their mistake. So I think that's a really nice touch to really help with kind of the atmosphere that the game is really showing. But Matt, I have to get to, before I kind of get deeper into the game, some of my chef kiss moments that I've seen so far. Okay. Granted, I'm only, I want to say 4 or 5 hours into the game, and from what I've read, this game is broken up into 3 acts, and it's said that you may be able to finish between 15 to 21 hours, depending on not only side stuff, but how you kind of interact with people. But before we get into specifics, there's early spoilers, depending on who you talk to, of course. There's a moment early on when you talk to Brother Sabat, and essentially he is sharing stories from a Ethiopian Bible. I really enjoyed this part of the game, since the imagery depicted is different than I should really set up the scene. Essentially, one of the early side quests in the game is you talk with Brother Sabat, who is a visitor to the Abbey. And he is from Ethiopia, but he's also kind of just traveling, seeing the world and meeting with different religious institutions. And one of his requests before he leaves is that he would like to have dinner with you and some of the townsfolk, because he hasn't really had a connection. So when you complete this side quest, per se, you're able to actually have dinner with him, all the different wives in town, and their children. And I really enjoyed this part, since the imagery depicted is different than what the children present in the scene are used to. Essentially because one of the cool things that Pentiment does is, since it really leans on this notion of books and storytelling, I've experienced this 3 times where when they talk about a book in particular, the scene will kind of transition into a page from the book in question. And it's all the characters involved in that dialogue kind of being imposed in the scene. So one of the early scenes when you're talking to one of the sisters at the Abbey is she's talking about how, about this wife and her, I believe, royal husband, and it's them essentially imposed in the scene and kind of reenacting parts of it. And I think it really adds to the emphasis of how important books are perceived in this time, but kind of giving you the context of how it's presented. But essentially, when in the scene with Brother Sabat, he's presenting images from a Ethiopian Bible. So you have them imposed in a scene, and you have all the little kids saying, oh, hey, why do they look different? This isn't like the Bibles we're used to. And I think it's a really nice moment because both Sabat and Andreas help depict how much bigger the world is compared to what these kids actually know, and how there are so many different people who look different from them. And I don't know, Matt, I thought that was a really nice, touching moment where, sure, this is a murder mystery, but it really kind of shows the importance of how, especially at the time of the 16th century, how you think the world is so big, or your world is so small, but it's actually so big. But there's one line that Andreas says to one of the little kids. It's that, oh, the world is actually really big, but the more we travel, the more we get to know each other, the world actually becomes really smaller just because you're able to interact with more people. And I don't know, man, I thought that was just a really cool way to depict just the difference in people and how we can all come together. Because, Matt, I think you and me growing up in Canada, we have religion, presented to us in a certain way. So for them to explore an Ethiopian Bible like this and kind of teach differences to the children of this story, I thought that was a really cool touch. But as the scene moves on, Sabat tells the story of Lazarus, and seeing the kids interact with the background imagery, because again, they're kind of imposed in this scene, from one of the kids using some of the background items to play with Andreas's hat, or one of the other little girls kind of not really paying attention to Brother Sabat, but actually just observing all the different people in the background. I think that was a nice touch because it's really true, Matt. This is heavy imagery and concepts that some of the kids can't really grasp, and they have to turn elsewhere to actually feel some sort of, stimulation. So I thought so far in my 5 hours, this was probably my favorite scene to experience, just because I think it really showcases a lot of what Pentiment has to offer. Because again, Matt, books play such a role in this storytelling, and this was one of 3 moments that I have had them explore books in this way. And I thought that was really cool because it really does emphasize how important literature is in this world. But speaking about the literature imagery, I do like how Andreas's journal is kind of used as the options menu. It has a lot of good stuff, from a journal telling you about, the story and the side stories you have going on. And it kind of breaks down, because so far the days have been broken down to, you have morning, you have a meal, you have your afternoon, you have another meal, and then you have essentially nighttime. And it kind of tells you, like Persona, what you did at those times, and a little kind of summary of like the person you talked to, which I thought was pretty nice.
Oh, it's like a full schedule of like your whole history?
Kind of, from what I've seen for the most part. Oh, nice. And Matt, there's a lot of different people to talk to, and limited amount of time during your day, or at least that's how I'm perceiving it right now. Again, I'm only a few hours in, so I think that's where, at least for this first act, the replayability comes in, just because you only have for example, there was one time where, oh, I can use this afternoon to talk to one guy I'm suspecting of the murder, or I can use it to talk to this one woman who might have insider knowledge. So it's really depending how you want to spend your day. So not only that, there's of course a map, essentially a glossary of all the different terms and places and concepts that have been explored before, and also just a list of all the different people you meet as well, which I thought, again, Matt, beefy options menu, beefy menus in general for a really text heavy game. I really found myself having to go back and forth between all the different options menus just to get familiar again with all the different places being mentioned, all the characters. And even though it's really nice to bring out the context sensitive menu when it comes or when it is available during dialogue, just to be able to go through the menu is really helpful as well. But Matt, another cool production thing I've really enjoyed is the use of thunder and lightning throughout this first act, at least, just because there has been a lot of storm imagery, and there have been times when the weather has really reflected that, and you do have thunder and lightning going off. And one of my favorite parts about the first act so far is it's a little stylistic effect, but unless I'm mistaken, and it's a total coincidence, I feel like during stormy weather segments, that thunder and lightning will go off, to emphasize key points in dialogue or key reveals. So I'm hoping it's intentional, because I think it really helps with that user experience again of, thunder and lightning went off. This is something I need to kind of pay attention to. I think for the instances that come to mind so far, this really does. It happened when, the murder, close to the murder being revealed, close to this one character did something weird. So it really does help to signify something's going on. At least I found. It could be a total coincidence, but if it was intentional, I thought that was really cool. And as I also noted, Matt, that your day is broken up into, your morning, your afternoon, your night, and then you have your meal section, which during these segments, you pick who do you want to have lunch or dinner with. And you can use this to your advantage, because this is where you get additional information, whether it is talking to a key character related to the murder or bouncing your ideas with a friend. So that's how it really pushes the story, or is in line with the story. But one of my favorite parts about this is that there's kind of a little mini game where you're essentially shown your meal spread for that meal, and it actually asks, what do you want to eat first? Like, do you want to eat your almonds first? Do you want to eat your rye bread? Do you want to eat your cheese? And I think it's just a fun little way to break up all the different dialogue. It doesn't really add anything that I've seen so far.
I mean, Jaren,
but
like everything I've heard about like this game, like from like what you're saying right now, and like just generally seeing it online, is that like this is one of the games where your choices really, really matter. Like, Jaren, maybe you're doing something unintentionally bad when you eat your bread first.
Okay, Matt. There was this one meal that I had recently with a royal woman, and the options were, I believe, it was like some sort of bread, some sort of like mashed potatoes, and then quail as like the main course. Matt, I screwed up here because normally all these meals give you the option to eat all three things. So Matt, obviously I start with like the bread or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then I went to the mashed potatoes afterwards because Matt, I'm the guy who saves the main as the main. Like, I want to get through, I'll eat all my veggies first. I'll eat all the sides first, and then I'll save the main for the last because I want to enjoy that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Conversation ended before I could eat the quail.
Damn, Jaren. Damn.
And Matt, I'm low-key paranoid that maybe this royal woman thought, oh, this guy's a weirdo. He didn't touch his quail. So, again, I'm really curious.
Can you see what they eat?
No. Well, you see things disappears, but I'm really focused on the dialogue and my food in front of me. Okay. But yeah, I don't know, Matt. Like, what I really So again, I think the meal section is a nice touch because it helps break up the dialogue. But one thing I've also noticed is, or one thing that I really liked is that from the meals I've experienced so far, they've all been different. You know, as I said, I had that meal with the royal woman where there was quail. I've also had lunch with, or a meal with a family that I'm acquainted with. I've also had lunch with my friends who are, you know, farm hands, and all the meals have been different. Like, again, there was one meal where it was just, oh, here's some rye bread, here's some almonds, and here's some cheese. So I really like that all the meals have been different because it really adds to the fact that Andreas himself is like this chameleon character where he's able to adapt to, you know, any social situation, but shows how he is able just to make conversation with like anyone of any class. And that's something it's that little thing that I really do enjoy as well. But speaking about how dialogue heavy this game is, there is also a dialogue hint system where, you know, you're given, when a character asks you something, you're given, of course, multiple options, but usually it's 3 options. But sometimes there's like a fuzzy 4th option, which allows Andreas to kind of take a moment to himself and kind of explore all the different options being present to you, because it's one of those things where, oh, I'm talking to a widowed woman right now who really doesn't like the church. So during, you know, that brief second to himself, he says, oh, okay, since I'm trying to get information from this woman and she hates the church, maybe if I say this, she'll react this way. If I say this, she might react this way. So I think it's a really cool way to handle the hint system because, Matt, this is a game that tells you, hey, they're going to remember that. It's one of those games, Matt. And I think the dialogue hint system, again, it's a small thing, but it really adds to not only different user experience, but really kind of helps you illustrate that, oh, I really do need to think what I'm going to say, because what I say will in turn affect how they treat me. And that, I guess this brings us to the main thing when it comes to dialogue heavy adventure games like this, the dialogue check system. Yes. And I believe I was talking to our friend Julian, and he said it really reminded him of Disco Elysium, which is a game I haven't played, but I've only done a few checks so far. Again, I'm kind of early on in the game, but based on the checks I've done so far, it's one of those things where all the different, they'll remember that choices you made kind of add to a dialogue check towards the end of your conversation where, for example, one of the early ones is, hey, there's this young man in the town who is kind of a troublemaker. He's kind of lazy. And depending on how you interact with him, depending on like the things he remembers of what you said, the dialogue check is, hey, will he react favorably or will he greet you when you see him on the street randomly? And it's one of those things where when the check comes up, it will say, hey, will this character greet you? And then it will kind of list to the side all the different checks of, oh, I told him he should help out his wife. That's 1 arrow down. Oh, I told him that he needs to do, or I called him out on something, that's 2 arrows down. And then all those different arrows will go into this essentially this dialogue check of, will this character greet me well? And of course I failed. And he told me to eat shit. So, but that's kind of I don't know how I feel about the dialogue check system that way, just because it's one of those things where, of course, your agency is, how do I respond to this character? But at the same time, it's one of those things where you don't know where these checks are leading you, essentially, where I think, again, tell me if you've heard this before, I'm so early on in the game where I do hope in Pentiment that the dialogue system gets fleshed out, where since this is Obsidian, I'm thinking of my time with like New Vegas where, you would think of if you need a character to do something for you. I think this system would work well if you were given multiple choices. For example, one of the early checks is, will the sister in the Abbey give you a particular book? And I failed the first check with her, but I was able to succeed the second check. But again, those were, okay, it's telling me this check, here's if I pass it or not. Nope, I failed it. The game moves on. I was kind of hoping with a system like that where, say, I was talking to a character and I was given multiple choices of how I can proceed forward. And depending on what I've said to him previously, if those, depending on what I want to say to him, if that would pass or fail. Because for the most part, I'm not sure if what I'm saying makes sense, but to me right now, the dialogue checks seem really passive because you're kind of caught off guard of, oh, this is all leading to this one thing, as opposed to, oh, maybe I'm given a choice of which dialogue check I want to kind of work towards or something like that. But I really do want to see if this will flesh out over time. But yeah, for the most part, I am feeling a bit passive in the whole thing. But yeah, again, Matt, that's kind of my early take with Pentiment. I'm just getting into the murder mystery part. I believe I'm coming up into the end of Act 1 because as the days progress, it counts down. It says, 2 days remaining, 1 day remaining. So I'm not sure what it's counting down to. I'm guessing that's the end of the first act. So yeah, it is a visual novel, Matt, but it's one that I'm finding some cool things here and there. But I guess based from what you've seen and what I've talked about for Pentiment, is this something that might be in your wheelhouse, or how are you with visual novels in general?
Jaren, visual novels are like really, I don't know, I can't do them anymore. Like we were talking about earlier, like Disco Elysium, that is something that conceptually interests me so much. But when I think about the amount of reading I'm going to have to do, it turns me off so badly. And that's kind of where I'm standing with Pentiment.
Right.
Like you mentioned it to me last week when we were talking about what we're going to record for this week's episode. And at that point, I hadn't heard of it. But I think that like set off that kind of like phenomenon for me where once you hear about something, you start seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
And I came across like a bunch of like stuff about it just over this past week. And it's all making me want to play this game. Like you were saying earlier, that I basically glossary for the game where it comes out and turns into that book. Yeah. The dialogue system sounds very interesting. With the whole like, hey, these are good points you made, these are bad points you made, and you didn't really know you were making them, but like this is how they all compile. That sounded very interesting to me. And I think the one that like really interested me the most is like really something kind of minor, but I really like this effect, which is that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jaren, but like you can sort of like pick a class or something.
Yes.
Towards the start of the game. And the fact that a lot of the reviews I saw were saying the class that you pick like will give you certain dialogue options.
Yes.
But those aren't always good dialogue options.
No, that's totally true. So, yeah, I can't believe I failed to mention that, but thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, it's really a cool way how it's actually implemented. I mentioned before that you meet a character and he is really curious about you and he wants to know your background. So that's really how you kind of pick your backstory to your character, where this person in particular is asking, oh, you went to school, what did you study? What was your major? What was your minor? And that's kind of how you pick it. So for me personally, my Andreas that I'm playing is one, I wanted to play him as essentially a playboy, but with a heart of gold. So, he
Johnny
has,
Bravo, got it.
Yeah. He has, that partying background, but he's also one who is, plus like, there was an element of metagaming for me, Matt, where he has a background of, rhetoric and being able to debate with people, but he also has a background a minor in like medicine, where he is interested in, medicine and nature in general. And I thought, okay, if this is going to be a murder mystery and this is something dialogue heavy, I want to have being able to talk my way out of things and having a medical background in my back pocket as well. But to the point you were making, Matt, since I picked the party, a partier background, Matt, in the Abbey, with all these religious figures, maybe saying that people are cutie pies isn't the best move. So yeah, that's definitely one thing that I've interested as well, where, I have found myself in instances where I'm trying to use my background and the person that I'm talking to isn't really, receiving it that well. So that's also being something that I'm really enjoying, because you know me, Matt, I'm someone in the Fallout games who saves scum just in case I said something that wasn't received well. But I think for Andres' story right now, it is something that, I want to see where it takes me, for better or for worse, because, hey, that's what happens when you're a party boy with a heart of gold, Matt.
Actually, one more thing, I guess, while you're close to it. Can you save scum in this game, or does it like do the thing where you're limited to one save?
I believe it's a one save ordeal, because when it says continue, it loads me back in, and when you quit out, it tells you when your last autosave is. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I like Andres as a character, and like, yeah, it is pretty stylistic in what it's presenting, but. I don't know, Matt. I was honestly falling off in the beginning because it is kind of a slow start. But once it picks up and then you start having to manage your day, Matt, as much as I do like the setting, it just made me wonder, is this what a Persona could be?
Is this medieval Persona?
Could be medieval Persona. But yeah, I'm enjoying my time. I might check in here and there, Matt. But again... Well, not again, but this is one of those things where it is a Game Pass game. So it's not, I don't believe it's available on Steam, but I wish it did, because this is a game where I would like to pick up, here and there just before bed or during some downtime, but I have to be in front of my Xbox or my PC for this. But yeah, for the most part, I'm enjoying it. And the story so far is pretty interesting. And again, Matt, a lot of people telling other people to eat shit, and I don't know. I find that entertaining to me.
It's a good goof.
But yeah, Matt, another beefy episode. We talked about, Marvel Fatigue, upcoming Marvel games, if we're interested in them not. You checked in again on Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. We took a look at the upcoming Splatoon weapons, which may or may not be out at the time of this released to all our friends. And we finished off with kind of an early look at the early game of Pentiment. And Matt, man, beefy episode, Matt, beefy episode. And who knows what next week will bring. I know there are some other Game Pass games I want to check out. There have been some titles I picked up during Black Friday as well. So we'll see, Matt. We'll see. But for now, I want to thank all our friends out there. I want to thank you as well, Matt, for joining me this week. I want to thank the theater employee that told us that there wasn't a second after credit scene to Wakanda Forever. So
that's good.
She told us, hey, there's no after credit scene. You can leave now so we can all clean the theater. I want to thank Sandwich Artisans. I don't want to thank the sandwich system in Pokemon Violet. I want to thank the Aerospray. And I want to thank people in Pentiment who tell other people to eat shit, because I get a laugh out of that.
It's a good goof. It's a good insult.
It is, Matt. It is. But Matt, that has been the Mistake Zone. And it did catch me off guard, because Matt, if you were to tell me in the 16th century people were telling people to eat shit, I would have been surprised. But Matt, also, I want to thank that kid for naming all his Pokemon poop.
Good goof.
But Matt, take it away.
This has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of shiny poo.
That's kind of gross, Matt.